Good evening to St. Lucians at home and abroad. Thank you for tuning in to the Prime Minister's first official press conference for the new year 2017. Good evening to Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs and the Public Service, the Honourable Chastanet. And thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for agreeing to do this press conference so early in the new year. And of course, welcome to members of the local media, and thank you for joining us here today. Let me take this opportunity to wish all of you best wishes for the new year. Please take note that we are live on NTN and also live on the government and the Prime Minister's YouTube channel. Today, we will begin with an opening statement from the Prime Minister, following which we will take questions from the media. An added feature of today's press conference is questions from people online and on Facebook. To begin, I now turn you over to Prime Minister Honourable Chastanet to deliver some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Nicole. First of all, let me wish all St. Lucians a prosperous new year. I hope that you had an uneventful but joyous season. I particularly want to reach out to my constituents in Micoud South and to thank them again for their support and how grateful I am for the opportunity to be able to represent them in the government of St. Lucia, and also to let them know that I very much enjoyed the kids' party, and I'm looking forward to some great projects and programs in the constituency in 2017. I also want to be the first to say to all my friends and supporters in Douga and Lacouville that the long-awaited repairs to their road will be commencing very soon in 2017. I also want to reach out to my cabinet colleagues and to thank them for their tremendous support and their hard work in the first 6 months of our government. It is very difficult taking over and with great expectations. And I have to say that I'm very, very proud in terms of how they've handled their affairs, and in particular their attention to detail at the government level. I also want to thank all the civil servants who have lent us a hand, have been open and transparent, and have been so supportive of us, and more importantly, embracing some of the new ideas and the challenges that we are putting forward to the civil service. I also want to thank the opposition for their spirited debates, and to say to them that I look forward to working with them in 2017 and also in moving this country forward together. And I'm very grateful to the Leader of the Opposition for his time and his support in our programs. I also want to say to St. Lucians that we have a very exciting agenda for 2017. We are in the last quarter of our fiscal year, and we are in the process of announcing our new plans. There are some ministries in which I'm going to be working with those ministries specifically in getting advance notice with regards to their budgetary allocations. One such ministry really is going to be the Ministry of Justice, in terms of new judges that we're looking to bring on, new support staff in terms of beefing up our judiciary. I long believe that tackling crime and making sure that there are convictions. I think criminals must know and understand and appreciate that when you do commit a crime, that the judicial system is going to move very swiftly to be able to convict you, and that there is a penalty towards crime. I want St. Lucians to always know that we are very aware of the escalating amount of crime in this country. We also know the grievance that it causes many St. Lucians, and we are never going to take our eye off the ball. Unfortunately, this is going to require the efforts of all of us, and in particular St. Lucians ourselves. I mean, I think that we have to get to the point where we're shamed and embarrassed by crime itself, that we have been given the benefit of having an independent country to govern ourselves. And what excuses are we using as to why we would find reasons to kill our own brothers, our own sisters, our neighbors, our friends, or just fellow St. Lucians? This is unacceptable, but this speaks more to our own values. And so the solution to crime is not just through the judicial system, but I think it's in our social system. So we have to do more work in the schools, more work in our communities, and get policemen not only to be looking to arrest people, but to be part of the process of preventing crime from taking place in the first place. I want to say that we have some great news coming out early in the new year with regards to the announcement by Sandals that they're going to be constructing a brand new Sandals La Source here in St. Lucia, which will be located in between Sandals Grand and the landings. This is going to be a 350-room resort, and it's promised to be a 6-star project here in St. Lucia. We will also be announcing further investments in the south end of the island. We've already heard about the DSH project and the commencement of the racetrack. We're presently doing the EIA. I'm hoping that that's going to be completed within the next week or so, and that we will get an announcement as to the official groundbreaking of that particular project. As I indicated, we're working with Mr. Teo King to put together a master plan for the other parts of Vieux-Fort. And we're also working on the Black Bay development, the Sabuchad development, as well as canals. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to make announcements very soon in the new year as to what is going to be happening and with those projects. I'm excited about the inroads that we're making in agriculture. Despite the Hurricane Matthew or the Storm Matthew, we were able to put money back into that sector to get production back up. And our meetings with the farmer producers, the banana producers in Martinique, as well as the marketing companies in France, are going well. As you know, that we've commenced exporting bananas through London to Paris. And so for the next 3 months, we're going to be testing our bananas in that market. And hopefully we can now generate a new market in addition to our UK market. But we also believe that we can revive demand out of the UK, despite the fact that the pound has dropped to 125. So it's been almost a 12% reduction in the value of the pound. In the area of infrastructure, I know that the minister is very keen on being able to repair a lot of the roads that we have. We're having several meetings with donor agencies to be able to get additional resources. We have made the decision to curtail the amount of money that we were going to spend on the Groselet to Castries Highway, and we're going to be spending more money now on the back roads. And we are looking at resurrecting the highway from Groselet all the way down to Vieux-Fort. And we believe that this is the long-term solution to some of the traffic that we're going through right now. But in the meantime, by beefing up the back roads and also bringing in some more new roundabouts, and also dealing with the schools, because we all notice the same thing, that when schools are back in session is when the traffic seems to be at its worst. So I know the Ministry of Infrastructure is working very hard to come up with some temporary solutions, because we all recognize what the delays that people are going through, and at the same time putting plans in for an expansion of our road network. So I'm looking forward to 2017. I'm looking forward to the many changes that we've been talking about. And I just want to say to St. Lucia and to St. Lucians how grateful I am for their support, that when I walk around, the handshakes, the hugs, and the words of support and encouragement are very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. We will go straight to the questions. In between your questions, I will be highlighting some of the questions from Facebook as well. So please introduce yourself as you begin to ask your questions. Nisha?
My name is...
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Nisha Charles from Choice TV. My first question is about, you obviously assumed office in 2016, and upon assuming office, you traveled extensively to other countries and indicating that you were meeting with business people and investors to seek more opportunity and expansion for St. Lucia. But we have not heard any possible tangible results resulting from those trips. Can you enlighten us?
Sure. Well, I mean, DSH is a good example of one. We're also going to be announcing very soon a major call center. There was a company that was actually in existence in St. Lucia, and the company was sold, and as a consequence of that, they closed their operation here in St. Lucia. So 150 St. Lucians lost their jobs. I took the opportunity when I was visiting American Airlines in Dallas to go and meet this company in Austin. And as a result of that, their new company that they've just started up, they're going to be now looking to put a major call center here in St. Lucia. And we will be making announcements, or Invest St. Lucia will be making announcements of the fact that they're looking to do a joint venture with them to go after similar companies. So Google and Facebook and a bunch of other companies that we believe that St. Lucians have shown and exhibited a talent in being able to cater to. We have a couple of the hotel projects that we're going to be announcing later, as I indicated to you. The Sandals project had been on the table for a long time. I had 2 trips with Mr. Stewart in terms of trying to convince him that the timing was now. We facilitated the expansion of the overwater suites, which had been put on hold. And I think that served well to hear this announcement that took place in Christmas. We've been meeting with owners of Coconut Bay. I'd been meeting with them prior to the elections, and I continue to meet with them afterwards to make that happen. The other meetings that we've had has really been in terms of the World Bank and the IMF and IFC. The IFC is going to be back down here talking about the airport project. I've made that public, very happy with the formula that they're proposing, and I'm hoping that we can find either a new formula through them, or that we've been in discussions with other people about now doing the airport project for us. The cruise ship terminal. So I've had several meetings with the appropriate authorities in terms of finding a sponsor to be able to put the cruise ship terminal in the south. We had the meetings with the Martinicans, and also we went to France to meet with the French marketing company. And as a result of those meetings, we've agreed now to have bananas shipped to Paris to be able to sample out those products. We believe that that's almost 40,000 tons a year if we're successful in opening up that market. And to put that in perspective, we're only producing 12,000 right now. We used to produce almost 120,000. So we think that between the French market and the British market, we potentially can get that back up to about 80,000 tons a year. I've had several meetings with regards to the climate change. As I indicated, I think that it was a great credit to the former government, Jimmy Fletcher in particular, and the Caribbean for the work that they did during COP in Paris, and the fact that we got the world to recognize that climate change was a real issue. We have been following up with Marrakesh. In fact, Dr. Fletcher was part of our team and part of the Caribbean team, helping us and continuing those negotiations. Where I'm concerned is that they're talking about making $100 billion available by 2020. I don't think that we can wait to 2020. I think that there are too many examples of deteriorations or undermining of our infrastructure as a result of heavy rains, which is because of the global warming. And we don't have the money to fix it. And even if we were to find money and we can borrow money to fix it, it's not going to increase the capacity. So all the bridges that we've done doesn't carry any more cars than they were carrying before. It's not making our destination any more competitive. But what we do is we have the debt to be able to pay for it. And when you start going around the island and looking at the amount of roads that we already have, just to fix them, how many millions of dollars that we're going to have to spend. So this is where my travels have taken me to. And as I said, in the first quarter, you will hear further announcements of new investments that are coming to the destination.
You have another question? Go ahead.
The CIP program is in the news as we speak, and you just made amendments to the program. What's your rationale behind revoking the need for CIP applicants to declare their net worth?
It really, the information that was coming in really was too difficult and too onerous and not convincing enough as to whether a person was worth $3 million or more. The fundamental part is that people are buying citizenship in other destinations for less. And it was an added burden that was being put on that was making us uncompetitive. People were having difficulties. What information do I send to prove that I'm worth $3 million? And then how do you determine the veracity of that information? So we found that that was not necessarily necessary. The most important part of the CIP is really the background checks. And that has remained very much in place. We're going to be as stringent as possible. So even take, for example, we've had some people that have been declined. And those people are entitled to appeal. And under the current legislation, the person they appeal to is to the minister. And I have felt that that was wrong. And that's what I've done, is I've actually put together a panel of 3 people, independent people, to be able to make that assessment. And furthermore, we go through the regional security force also to determine even further veracity. So we're taking the due diligence and the background checks extremely seriously. And when I say to us solutions that your security is of high importance, and I also recognize that we're the border for England, we're the border for France and Canada and the United States, and we have to take that responsibility very, very seriously. So that is the most important part in the aspect of the Citizenship by Investment program.
Okay, I'll just take a Facebook question before we switch to Stan, who has some questions. Joanne Michelle Edwards, she wants to know, can St. Lucia become a manufacturing nation? Let's build factories and skills instead of hotels and servers. That was one of our Facebook questions. Over to you.
Yeah, it's a common situation in terms of the need to diversify. I think that we do have some opportunities in manufacturing, but realistically, that when you look at it, the cost of electricity in St. Lucia is substantially higher. So, for instance, the cost here is around 36 cents US a kilowatt hour. In Trinidad, it's less than 8 cents. Okay, you go to the United States of America, or you go to Mexico, or you go to China, and the cost of electricity is substantially less. And while St. Lucians complain, and rightfully so, that we don't get paid enough, relatively speaking, our salaries are substantially higher than places like Mexico and Sri Lanka and the more successful manufacturing destinations in the world. The cost of transportation, so the cost of bringing the materials to St. Lucia, because most of the stuff that we manufacture, we have to bring all the materials in, and all we're doing is really the assembly. So unless we're able to find things that we can manufacture from St. Lucia that are unique to St. Lucia, will make us much more competitive. Now, we do have some manufacturing success stories in St. Lucia. We will continue to support those, but I believe that the area of call centers and IT centers and what we call back of the office operations, the ability to have accountants or lawyers doing work that could be done cheaper here than it could be in the United States or even in Canada, that's the opportunity. And we've seen that industry grow by leaps and bounds in Jamaica. And we're seeing some of those companies looking to open up twin plants here in St. Lucia. And as I indicated, very excited about this new partnership that we're going to be developing with a company called Ojo Labs. They are launching a huge artificial intelligence with call centers. So I'm very excited about what that's going to. I think that when people see the actual facility that's going to be erected, it's going to be a world-class facility. And I think that that's an area where we can be much more competitive.
That will be in the south as well?
It's going to be in the south as well.
Okay. Take a question from Stan.
Stan Bishop, the Voice to Speaker. Good evening, PM. I have 2 questions so far. And the first is, earlier today, the leader of the opposition said at a press conference that a letter to a developer named Ainsworth and signed by the former Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony, when he was PM, had nothing to do with the government. Would you care to comment on that?
Wow. So you're saying to me that the former Prime Minister who signed the letter means that he didn't do it as a government official? I don't understand how a person can make a statement like that. How can a Prime Minister sign a letter and then another person say that it has nothing to do with government?
So you say the letter does exist with the former Prime Minister's signature?
It does. It does. And it's a very interesting letter.
And do you hope to make that Public record?
I will make that public record. As I indicated, that I will have a special press conference to deal specifically on that matter. And as I said to people in St. Lucia, that there was an alternative reason as to why the Labour Party chose not to proceed with the DSH project. And in fact, it has a lot to do with the letter from Robert Ainsworth. And what's very interesting is a lot of the things that they're criticizing are the exact same things that they have done in the letter. So when they talk about that the DSH project is too big for one person to give 700 acres, they're proposing to give 1,000 acres in the Vieux Fort area alone. Plus they were talking about Louvet, they were talking about Trumassé, and they were talking about Pralet. And then when you look at the levels of incentives that they were giving, so when Ernest Hilaire or the leader of the opposition would say, wow, we've given away everything and there's nothing to be gained by the people of St. Lucia, well, they gave away more. And there's a particular clause in the letter which is even more disturbing. But again, we'll get to that.
And what happened to that deal? Did that deal
Well,
was,
what's interesting is that the government claims that that we didn't do our due diligence on DSH and that I rushed into a deal. So here is a letter in which initial contact was made in November of 2015. There was a physical meeting in December of 2015. And then there was a subsequent meeting in the early part of February, and a letter was issued on February 9th. And when you go online and you type in the word Teo Alking or China Horse Club, you know what? There's reams of articles and stories about what Mr. Alking and China Horse Club have done. Endless. I mean, from what he did in Malaysia to what he did in Dubai to what the China Horse Club now has become the 9th largest syndicate of purchasing of or investing in horses. His pictures all over the place. But when you now go and put Robert Ainsworth and Lifestyles Incorporated, you find out nothing. And when you do further investigation, you find out that this was a company that was incorporated. One was incorporated in November of 2015, and the other company was incorporated in January of 2016. And other than that, there's nothing. So, you know, I think that the leader of the opposition, Musa, Alva, and Ernest Hilaire have a lot to answer to. So, I mean, if you're going to come out and criticize the DSH project, which you're more than welcome to, and I encourage you to say all the things that you have to say, but then here's evidence that you were going to do something completely different, that it was 4,500 acres of land. So, I mean, it's sad that the opposition would want to play politics to this level. And, you know, I think that I was in opposition. I tried very much to not complain about everything. If the government did something well, we said they did it well. But we tried to specifically be very specific about what we had problems with. Which country in this region doesn't give incentives? So even the idea on the DSH project that we were selling land for $1 an acre for a year, when the agreement, which they have, says that that's only on lands that are going to be for public use. So we're just leasing the land for $1 a thing. Any land that's going to go into the commercial activity of the project was being sold for between 60,000 US and 90,000 US dollars an acre. So, but that's the job of the opposition, to try to spin things, and I get that. But what was really disturbing to me is after listening to the emotional argument by both Ernest Hilaire and also by the leader of the opposition, and knowing Musa and knowing Alva, that they would have allowed that project to go through. And the fact is that not only did Kenny Anthony sign it.
My final question for now is, I think by now, Prime Minister, you would have known about the passports for sale documentary that was carried by CBS on last Sunday, in which the program described the CIP as a cash cow, which is just aimed at selling passports and providing safe haven for would-be or current criminals. What is your response to that? And how can you assure St. Lucians that we are following the highest standards of due diligence? Because, I mean, you would have been at the last Parliament session where there was a vociferous crowd outside with some valid reasons and concerns. What assurances can you give St. Lucians that we're not selling away too much or giving away too much in this DSH deal in return for the investment that we really need?
Well, I hopefully we're not confusing DSH with CIP.
Well, they're interrelated.
How are they interrelated?
They're interrelated because, for example,
Giving them
a lot of some of the regulations that have been changed. If you go through the agreement that was posted online, and so far DSH is our major investor. We don't have many CIP investors as yet. Unless you're tailoring those regulations to allow entry for new investors. DSH is the biggest project so far.
But you do know that they had 4 projects previously approved, and then we've only approved 1 additional one. In fact, DSH hasn't even been approved as a CIP program yet. And the only change that was made as a result of DSH, which was one that we would have had to make anyway, is the limiting the number of past citizenship programs to be sold to 500 per year. And I think that you just do the math. If you're going to have 6, 7, 8, 9 projects that are going to be selling under the CIP program, how do you limit to 500? I mean, it's just not going to generate enough. And what was the magical number about 500? To me, is as quickly as people can raise monies, the quicker now the projects are going to get off the ground. So I didn't understand why the 500 limitation in the first place. So that was the only fundamental change that was made because of DSH. The changes that have been made that were announced very recently have been made in order to become competitive. So the government had in that you had to prove that you had $3 million worth of net worth. Nobody else has that. We were selling at 200,000. Dominica was selling at 100,000. And I hear this idea that, well, we're be selling ourselves cheap and we're selling ourselves and undermining our market value. But the fact is that when people are buying a citizenship program, they're buying it because it has a value. And it's unfortunately, and we don't want to like to hear that, but the value isn't necessarily the country. The value is what the access that the citizenship gives you. So how many visa-free places you can go to, and where I can go, and the ease of doing business, and some place that's innocuous. So for instance, there is a growing market right now of Americans who are interested in having a secondary passport because of terrorism. So when they're traveling abroad and they're in a hotel, they'd rather have another passport because they feel they're going to be not a target. And there's a lot of legitimate reasons why people want to have a secondary passport. The other thing that is interesting, and some people get it, is that St. Lucia was already in the citizenship business. Not directly, but the fact is a person can buy a passport from Dominica or from Antigua or from St. Kitts or from Grenada and had full rights in St. Lucia. And that's why I continue to say that my preference would be that this ought to be an OECS program based out of the OECS Secretariat. And I can say to all the other prime ministers that St. Lucia is willing to sign up to that.
But is it justifiable to reduce the 200 threshold by half?
Yes, because you're not selling at 200. So in fact, even the other countries are offering either discounts and incentives off of the 200,000, or for instance, one of the countries made themselves cheaper in selling to families. And when you look at the numbers of programs that are being sold on an annual basis, Dominica by far is the biggest seller. So Dominica is around 1,500 a year. The closest island to them is around 400. Now what's interesting is that when St. Kitts was in this program by itself, they were selling around 2,200 to 2,500 at its peak. Now that you have 5 countries coming in to be part of the program, you would have thought that extra activity would have created an increase in the demand and that we would have seen that number grow. In fact, it hasn't. So in essence, we're really just dividing the 2,200 to 2,500 amongst ourselves. So you tell me, how do you think that we can go and sell a program in which we're offering the exact same passport in terms of where it can access for twice the price.
We're talking about St. Lucia passport, not.
No, but I mean, a Dominica passport is 100,000. And a Dominica passport right now has the exact same visa-free access that we do. So how do you do that? And then the other thing that's very interesting is to say, well, wealthy people want to know that they're in a place of prestige and everything else. Even wealthy people understand value. Okay, so our goal, as I indicated, is that we're going to keep this thing very transparent. The funds that are going to come in are going to be going into a sovereign fund. I will be announcing very soon how that sovereign fund is going to be set up and how it's going to be regulated and who's going to be managing the sovereign fund. But I can assure you, it's not me and it's not anyone in government. It will be completely independent, but it will be the asset of the state. Once the monies go into the sovereign fund now can lend money to projects in St. Lucia, whether it be tourism projects, whether it be local projects. It can buy bonds from St. Lucia. That sovereign fund now can also interact with other sovereign funds around the world. So other developed countries who want to be able to provide assistance to St. Lucia now can do it through the sovereign fund. So I'm very excited about where we're taking this program. The second part that's very important is that we're going to be introducing a new component which is called a residency program. And there's two forms of residency. I call one's permanent residency, which is where you purchase citizenship, or temporary residency, in which you can now either make an investment in the sovereign fund or buy real estate in St. Lucia. So we're looking to really grow the residency component of the program and to take it more high-end at that point. But right now, I've made no bones about it. We are trying to sell as many of the citizenship programs as we can in a shortest period of time in order to get that money to be able to seed the sovereign fund. Seeding the sovereign fund means that we have money to go in the sovereign fund. Because a sovereign fund's value takes about 3 years, because the sovereign fund has to show that it has a disciplined investment program. So that's what we're attempting to do at this moment, and we believe at this moment that Dominica has set the price. We're hoping that the islands that have agreed to be part of this program can live up to their first commitment of harmonizing the system. There was a committee that was set up. It very rarely meets, and it very rarely comes to any conclusions. But I truly believe that this program would be better run at the regional level, but until such time, St. Lucia will do what it has to do to make the program work.
Are there any more CIP related questions, since
Yes,
we're on the issue
yes.
right now? So we'll just do
The
that.
opposition has a concern about the amendment of Regulation 9. I'm reading from their statement. It says the National Economic Fund should be placed within the Treasury with deposits going to the Consolidated Fund and used according to how Parliament has agreed. It is not for the Minister to announce through regulations how the money is to be used. Furthermore, the Minister must provide more information on marketing and promotion as suggested. Let me explain why. As it is constituted, there are 2 marketing agencies that are promoting the CIP at their expense wherever it is agreed. In return for each applicant brought in, these agencies get 10% of the donation of the fees. So we need to ask the following. 1, is the established marketing arrangements revoked? 2, if not, is the CIP paying 10% to marketing agencies, then holding 20% for more marketing? This means for every $100,000 received, the people of St. Lucia will only get $70,000 for citizenship. And they're asking, if that's the case, why would you revoke an arrangement where you pay 10% to now collect 20% to spend on the same marketing? Is there any other agencies which will be receiving payments from the 20%?
You know, a little information is dangerous, and in terms of how you want to be able to use it. You know, Mr. Hilaire keeps attempting, but what he forgets is that he was the architect. So the person who put those marketing agreements in place and never told any of us was him. So in fact, you remember the story of how we found out about the company, because the company agreed to pay $150,000 towards lobbying firm in the United States of America. The 20% has nothing to do with the 10%. The 20% is because government is the one now funding the cost of the CIP. There are people working there. There's cost of processing, and there's a cash flow problem at the CIP because the budgets that they put in terms of what they were going to sell never happened. So all we've done is we've allowed now the CIP to keep 20% of the money to be able to cover its basic cost. We will do an amendment to that 20%, but we had to get it through right now because CIP could not keep any of the money. All right? So what we've done is that there will be a thing where there'll be a cap on how much money the CIP can keep for the administrative cost of the agency. The 10% fee, he's the one who signed the deal and gave exclusivities for companies, whether they delivered or not. So anything that was sold in those countries, right, we have to pay 10%. And we're in the process of negotiating to get out of that agreement. So I know that the chairman and the committee are working with them and have had preliminary conversations, but the goal is to get out of that, of those marketing agreements. We believe that Dominica has shown the way, that by having a cheaper price, that all the agents out there now take that price and add their commission on top of it. Okay? Some of the other countries now are working in reverse. So they're saying we're going to put a higher price, but we're going to give you a commission. It comes out net to the same thing. And that's where, you know, when we say that we're cheaper than everybody else, we're cheaper in absolute price, the same price as Dominica. Now, some companies prefer it to have the commission guaranteed because you have people who now are selling to other people and they want to cover their commission. And this is what I kept on saying. This business is a very complicated business. It's a very competitive business. It didn't start in the Caribbean, although St. Kitts was doing it, but United States of America has been in the citizenship program for a very long time. Canada, United Kingdom, I can go down the list of people. So when you tell me that this is a grab for money, or that's what I think the 60-minute show said, what's the difference between them going after the best athletes, the richest people, and the brightest people? Isn't that not to make a financial contribution to their country? When the taxes went up in Europe and all of a sudden people wanted to move to England, they were facilitated. What did they have to do? Buy a £1 million development or deposit money into their accounts. So the critical thing here is the scrutiny of the people and that we're not allowing despots to come into their country. And so far, that's not happened. Where the programs have gotten into problems in the past, and we highlighted that when we were in opposition, was diplomatic passports. Okay? You do not have to have a CIP program in order to give a diplomatic passport. In fact, Ernest Hilaire knows that better than anybody else because Jufali was given his diplomatic passport long before the CIP program started. And that was the point I was making, is that the controversy behind CIP has always been the issuance of diplomatic passports. So one, giving somebody citizenship, and then quickly following on the heel of that, giving them diplomatic status. Okay? And there was a country to the north of us, and well, two countries to the north of us, that found themselves in that problem. And 60 Minutes highlighted some of those examples. So I can say to you, the United Workers' Party and this government is not in the business of selling diplomacy. And that's a value issue. It has nothing to do with CIP.
Okay, thank you. Don? Yes.
Don Nicholas, DBS Television. Still on the CIP program. I have another question that is non-related. The opposition, they're alluding that because of the amendments, an applicant is not required to produce a police certificate from the country of origin. Is that really so?
No, in fact, it was a typo error that happened at the printery. In fact, that situation has been rectified. So the section that was being eliminated was the section that required the 500 limit. So it got 7.7 confused with 7.9, and that has been rectified. But absolutely, all of the due diligence requirements are still there, and nothing has changed. And in fact, we're trying to put even further layers on top of it.
You have a CIP question?
No.
Okay, well, let's just do the for Reggie's first.
Reginald Andrew, The Mirror. Yes, Mr. Prime Minister. At the last sitting of the House of Parliament, one opposition MP spoke about some clarification with the CIP. Said that we don't know who is the minister responsible for the CIP. As well, there was a statement about a regulation that states every 3 months or every 6 months that a report should be tabled in Parliament. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Sure. The minister responsible is myself, the Minister of Finance, like how it was previously. In terms of the report, we only just recently have had a sale. So I think that we've done, 6 CIP programs, and we've done 6 bonds, but I think we've only collected the money on 3 of the bonds. So there isn't anything significant to report, but we will be adhering to that requirement.
Okay. Is it a CIP question? Okay, let me just ask one Facebook question. It's actually related to DSH. Philip Dujour wanted to know, have we signed an agreement for the racetrack, and how many people are actually going to be employed in the South with the construction of the racetrack and upon completion?
The deal for the racetrack has been agreed to. The developer, as I said, submitted all his EIA, so I'm hoping that by next week that the DCA will have the approval, and that we can commence the project, the construction of that project. I don't know how many people he's going to employ in the construction period, but I will make that announcement very, very, very soon. In terms of the operations, they're hoping to have 400 horses permanently at the stables, and you can assume at least 2 people per horse. So that's 800 people right there. And then you're talking about the broadcasting that has to continue, and the general operations. And then quickly going into that will be then the marketing of the real estate lot. So you're going to have at least over 1,000 people employed in the DSH project in its initial phase.
Okay, all right. Reggie?
Yeah, in the national development plans, we know that national security is a priority. And lately we've seen that the CCC has employed the city police. But going further along, what is the scope regards the CCTV cameras, and as well as the forensic lab? What is the update on that?
We are working on the CCT cameras. We're also working with the private sector. So to look at the different stores that they have along highways and in town, and to make sure that cameras are also placed on the outside so that we can get fuller coverage. So the gaps that exist, that's where the government will be filling in those gaps. In terms of, what was the other question? Forensic lab. We have been in discussions and continuing discussions with a private sector company looking to privatize the lab. It's a company that's from the region and actually runs its own labs as well. We feel that might be the best way to be able to move forward. One, that they're already selling services to the other islands. So there isn't enough business in St. Lucia itself to keep a forensic lab going. So it is a financial cost. It's a huge financial cost. And we think that it's going to augur better for us to have an independent agency running the lab. There is a submission by some other people to run the lab for the government. So those are the 2 proposals that we're looking at, and we'll certainly make that decision very, very soon.
Just finally, with regards to the court building, the courthouse, how soon are we looking to see it back in operation? Is it
my understanding is that they're cleaning out the ducts. The inspection came down, and they found out that there was still debris or dust particles in the ducts. So that's now being redone. I'm hoping that that's going to be completed within the next 3 weeks, and that the courthouse will be open within another month or month and a half.
Okay, we'll go down the line again. and end that with Nisha.
And the opening depends on, again, bringing in the health inspectors once that work is done, subject to their approval.
Okay, just moving to tourism. Given the importance of the tourism industry to the local economy, what is the government doing in order to beef up security at various tourist sites around the island in view of what happened in Soufrière?
I spoke to the minister, and I've also spoken to security. I've asked for an immediate audit of all of the tourist sites that we have to go back to ensuring that everybody has their own security on place in the destination and each of the tourist sites. We've seen now what Castries has done. Soufrière has done it in a less visible way, but you may see that the Soufrière Foundation might go the same route of bringing back its own police. I know that we're talking about whether in fact those policemen should be armed or not, and that's a discussion that's taking place as we speak. So it's something I'm very, very concerned about. Particularly, we saw some muggings in the town of Castries as well, but that's why I think that the introduction of the new policeman, the city policeman, is a welcome change. But it comes to a bigger issue, you know, the whole thing with crime. I'm not convinced that crime is only that poverty contributes to crime only. Okay, there's still a certain amount of values that we have, and solutions must see criminals not as Malawies, but as people who are affecting our society, and that they are the enemy. They are the people that are destroying our livelihoods, and we shouldn't be protecting them. And the police cannot do the job exclusively by themselves. But that's why it comes back to now the judicial process of getting quick convictions, and that people know that crime is not going to pay. And so that's why I'm saying to you that while I'm going to be doing things to beef up the police force in terms of new equipment, but we're really, the emphasis in the first 6 to 8 months is going to be on the judicial system.
Okay.
Just one more for me. While we're on the issue of crime and security, what about security at schools? This has also been a burning issue. The National Workers Union just met with, I think, the education minister to discuss the issue, and the business of the traditional watchman thing, they wanting to move away from that. Where does that leave the watchmen? Does that put them on the breadline, or you know, what really are the measures that will be taken place to really beef up security at the schools? Well, I mean, it's a very serious issue, and it's one in terms of safety, and it's also in terms of cost. So the watchmen, as they are constituted, are inadequate to be able to deal with the problem. But at the same time, we have a cost issue. I mean, and I want everybody in St. Lucia to understand that we are running a deficit government right now. We're spending more money than we're taking in, and that the majority amount of money that we're borrowing is really to pay for debt. And we're at 80-something% now, 83% debt to GDP. More than likely, the economy is either going to be flat or contract for this fiscal year. The changes that we're going to be bringing about and the lowering of the tax base, of the tax rate, in the short run could potentially dampen how much money we collect. So if you're going to collect less money and you still have all these expenses, it's going to be a problem. So we have got to find a solution to the problem of the security at the schools, but we've also got to be extremely mindful of our cost problems. I mean, so every day we're talking, there's just more and more cost. And so what it means is we cannot go about doing business in the same way. And so electronically surveillance may be a more cost-effective way of being able to help in the school areas. But again, it comes back to convictions. Right now, I think a lot of people commit a lot of crimes in this country because there is no fear of being convicted. And we've got to change that. And I'm telling you that we are going to be putting monies into bringing more magistrates in, bringing more judges in
increasing the number of courthouses that we have. And then part of that is about evidence. So that's why the forensic lab plays such an important role. And then beefing up the police investigative arm to make sure that we have the necessary evidence.
Before we take a few final questions from Stan and Nisha, I just want to sneak in Facebook questions. Jody Wall wanted to know, what are your administration's plans for constitutional reform and changes to the constituency boundaries, and how can the average citizen get involved in the process?
We've started the process in that there was a constitutional committee, and that's the first thing that we're going to be looking at. So Kim St-Rose, who's the former AG, who's now a special advisor to the Prime Minister, is going to be working with me and also the opposition in identifying what are the things that we already agree on. And let's bring that through Parliament. And then to create up a forum where there can be dialogue between ourselves and the opposition, and trying to find some common ground. And I think that we still have to go back and have more town hall meetings and get more ideas from the public, because I don't think by any means that the Constitutional Review report, while it may have taken 12 years, is a complete package of everything that we need. In terms of the boundary commission, the boundary report, that is still marred in the courthouse. I'm hoping that a pronouncement on that will be made very, very soon. But in the meanwhile, I met with Joe Clark, who is the former Prime Minister of Canada, and he's part of a group of former leaders that help new leaders. And so they reached out to me when I was in New York and offered to assist me in any area. And so I've identified the Boundaries Commission. In fact, they're going to be down here in February on their first mission. I've already advised the leader of the opposition, who's agreed to meet with them. And hopefully we can find resolution among ourselves, because we've not had a major boundary change since 1997. And there was a very good report that was produced by the Commonwealth Secretariat at the request of the former Prime Minister, and talked about changes that had been happening in other Commonwealth countries that have not happened here. So one, for instance, is that we have the Speaker of the House as the chairperson. Many people see the Speaker of the House as partisan. We say that the commissioners are independent and autonomous, but we appoint political hacks, both sides. So I'm not complaining about one or the other. Both sides have traditionally appointed political hacks, whereas most countries in the world have gone to judges and have gone to people who are not political hacks, okay? That the census is done every 10 years, and after the census is when a review of the boundaries are done. So the attempt here is to make sure that no political party is using an advantage to cut the boundaries in their way, so gerrymandering. And unfortunately, that's what we continually do. So I'm hoping that we can get the cooperation of the opposition. I look forward to the participation by Mr. Clark and some of the other former leaders in terms of remedying the situation. And I mean, I asked the public to write their own members, because it's unfair. I mean, you have 25,000 people who are getting to vote for one person in Gros-Islet, and you have 4,500 people voting for one person in Dennery South, or 5,500 people voting for one person in Labrie. So it's unfair. And that's not in keeping with what the Constitution wanted, and it's not perceived as being democratic. And so we've got to be able to remedy this situation.
I just want to squeeze in one more thing. Dennis Lovins, I know you spoke about roads in your opening statement. However, he's from Auger, and he says the roads in the community are really bad, especially the road going towards Vieux-Fort and the main road going towards Labrie. They're in a deplorable state. I want to know, when will these roads mentioned be fixed? He also says that there is a serious water problem in the community of Auger. So he wants to know, when will the government make an investment in the equipment for water storage?
We're working very hard on water. As I indicated, you know, we've got this loan that we're looking to take from CDB to do the dredging of the dam. That's not going to help the people in Auger. We're looking at investing a significant amount of money in a dam eventually in the south, but putting some new water intake facilities in the south. Those are underway. But at the same time, I have to be honest with everyone, we're also looking at the possibility of desalination plants, or desal plants. If we see the uptake in development in the south that we're seeing, I don't think that we have the comfort of waiting 8-10 years to be able to build a dam. And the need is absolutely now. We also know that from the agricultural sector, that the wet season and the dry season is because of water. And so people can't grow crops year round simply because they don't have access to water. Desal plant, we believe, can help resolve that problem much quicker. We're seeing desal plants in Barbados, we've seen them in Antigua, we see them in Turks and Caicos, in Bermuda, Australia, even Israel. So that's a discussion that we're having. In fact, we're going to be following up with CDB. I'm going to be sending a team here to look at that as one of the alternatives. As soon as that is completed, we'll make the decision as to how we're going to resolve the problem in the south. And I beg his indulgence and his time. And with regards to the roads, I mean, it's a huge problem. I mean, we've found the roads in a deplorable state throughout the country. And I think because of the storms and the fact that we've only been spending a minimum amount of money on the maintenance of the roads for consecutive years has really caught up to us. And we need a lot of money to be able to fix up the roads. And when I mean a lot of money, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is why you will see me agitating and advocating and lobbying to get access to green funds now. And so we've put two ideas forward at the international level. One is that the developed countries of the world have agreed collectively that they're going to allocate 0.7% of their GDP towards aid. And even when they've done that, the Caribbean and small states generally around the world have not been the beneficiary of those funds because the cost of spending those monies in our islands are so expensive, meaning the mobilization cost. And that's why you see the French and the British and the Americans putting money through CDB rather than doing it on a bilateral basis. Bilateral meaning from directly with one state. So we're asking that if, in fact, that they be allowed to give in a credit of 2 to 1. So for every dollar that they spend in a small developing state for a climate change project, infrastructure, that they get a credit for $2 in spending for 1. The second thing that we've asked is that everybody in St. Lucia ought to know that we've graduated to what's called a middle income country. And as a result of that, we don't get access to concessional funds anymore. So we're asking that in the case again of infrastructural projects, roads, dams, those kinds of things, that we be classified as a developing country to now re-access concessional funds, free funds. We're not in the position right now, as I'm saying, to borrow money to pay for these infrastructural projects. And if we have to do that, it means that the debt to GDP is going to just climb.
Okay. Stan?
I guess this will be my final question. Yeah. Just have about 3. PM, last time you spoke to the press in this same location, you addressed the issue of healthcare. And you said this year was going to be sort of a monumental year for healthcare. Can you give us a status update on that? That's one. What is the update on impacts? What steps has the government made to reassure citizens and external neighbors that we're doing everything we can to ameliorate the problem? And my final question is the startups. I came from Israel a couple of weeks ago, and the municipality of Tel Aviv invests in its citizens. Actually, Tel Aviv is per capita, the #1 startup capital in the world. And it works where the municipality just charges startup investors a nominal fee. They have access to a building because they have their own key, and they pair a would-be investor with another person. And they vibe off of each other. What I understood is that for every 100 startup businesses that get off the ground, 97% fail. Now, naturally, we ask the question, why do you sustain that? they said for the 3% that actually succeed, it outweighs the 97% that fail. Now you know that in St. Lucia we have a problem with especially young investors approaching, and I hate to use the word development banks, and being turned down because their businesses or the business ideas don't seem viable. I spoke to 2 business people, just one this week and one last week, and they've been turned down by almost every single bank in this country. One was lucky, well, both of them have been able to muster the resources from some other sources, and they're in business now. What assurances can you give St. Lucians, since you say government is big on employment, creating employment? What assurances can you give St. Lucians that if they have good ideas, that they will be supported by especially our commercial banks?
So should I answer the last one, because that seems to be the one that you're very, very passionate about. I've been having meetings, and we haven't come to a conclusion yet, but this is the direction we're going in. So basically, the St. Lucia Development Bank, I've gotten some young people on that board. And the goal here is that the St. Lucia Development Bank needs to channel its lending through separate entities. So let's take TIPA as an example, who is to take an existing company and help them get into the export market. So if they're going to borrow money from the development bank to do that, the development bank knows that the person isn't doing it by themselves. So there's that support mechanism to help them go. We're going to be opening up a new entity called Village Tourism Incorporated. So it's an entity to assist small guest houses, small restaurants, small gift shops in the different communities in being able to develop. And we're going to give them accounting systems, we're going to give them marketing support, we're going to give them management support and training. So again, if the development bank is lending money through that entity to those people, it knows that that support mechanism is going to be there. So we have these incubators, TIPA, Village Tourism, the new marketing entity for agriculture. We would like to open up an agency for the creative industries like TIPA, so that basically will help people in the creative industries develop and hone their skills as businesses. I've seen too many young people who are signing contracts with labels too early, and therefore they get the short end of the stick. So the idea here is to not only help develop their skills as a musician or as an artist, but also to develop their business skills. What does a contract look like? You know, what are the things you should be looking out for? What's branding, and how is the distribution system working? Educate them about all those things. So that is how the development bank is going to be able to work and to be able to now develop those people. We're not in the position of Israel. So I agree with Israel. I mean, I've said this a million times, that small businesses are like turtle laying eggs. Okay, lays hundreds of eggs, but only a handful of those actually ever succeed in becoming adults. But the fact is, you don't know which one is going to be successful. Mm-hmm. And as I've always indicated, tourism is a platform to help small businesses, especially in the export market. Because what tourism does, it brings that export market to our shores. So it brings Americans, it brings British, it brings Canadians. And if we're now savvy enough that when we're producing things here and we're selling it to the tourist, that we know, hey, Americans seem to have an appetite for this, or Canadians seem to have an appetite for this, okay? And then that now helps in terms of penetrating that particular market. I'll give you a great example, bananas. We know that 85% of the British people that come here come from the town of London. And we actually, because of the postal codes that we get, we can pinpoint where they come from, which means we can identify the grocery stores that are closest to where the majority of people who've been to St. Lucia. Now what I want to see here is billboards that promote our bananas. I want to know that we're selling banana daiquiris. I want to know that we're selling banana coladas. I want to know that we're selling banana cakes. I want to know that we're giving them a recipe of using a St. Lucian banana, and it can only work with a St. Lucian banana. This is where we need to become savvier, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And we spend so much time complaining rather than looking at the opportunities that exist for us, and that's why it's to create the agencies that can facilitate that, to stop that level of frustration. But I would be lying to tell you that we have $1 billion lying around to be able to facilitate that. But I want to take this time to say this to you. the policies that we're putting in place are to be able to grow the economy, to be able to generate more taxes, not by charging a higher rate, but by creating more volume of business. And if we're successful in doing that, more money that we get, the more things that we can sponsor like that. So right now, if we were to live within our budget, we couldn't do a lot of things because we're spending more money today than we're earning. So it means that we should cut education, we should cut healthcare, we should cut the $1 million that we're spending a year on maintaining the roads, we should cut the $1 million a year that we're spending on maintaining the schools. So we're broke. What we're doing right now is absolutely, categorically unsustainable. And it's unsustainable simply because the economy has not been growing. I mean, unfortunately, Sir Dwight has passed away, but the message was the same every year. You need to grow by 5% per year. You need to reduce the debt that you have to less than 60% in order to be able to create a viable country. And that is what we're going to be focused on. And I preach this every day with the civil servants. I preach this every single day with business people. That why would you continue doing something that you know is not going to work? It's the old adage. If you continue to do the same thing the same way every day and expect a different result, that's not going to happen. So that's where we're going with the small businesses. I'm a big believer in small businesses. You never know when that small business becomes big. And I always talked about that Tortuga Rumba Cake example. And it's now an international business, and its headquarters is in Cayman. So I want to see a bunch of businesses successful on a global basis, and knowing their headquarters office is going to be here, and flying that St. Lucian flag very proudly.
Update on healthcare.
You have healthcare. We're moving very quickly with healthcare. I met with the Europeans when I was in Brussels in terms of how we're going to handle the Owen King Hospital. There's still a lot of issues with that hospital. We've asked for a company to come down called Aon, which is a huge insurance company, to do consultancy work with us to see how we could frame a healthcare insurance program here. So basically the way the healthcare insurance would work is that everybody who is working, so if you're working in the private sector, the company makes a contribution and each of the individual workers make a contribution. If you're working in the civil service, the government makes a contribution and the civil servants make a contribution. The people who are unemployed, the people who are living below the poverty line, and pensioners who are earning an income less than a certain amount, government would have to make their contribution. But it means that everybody will have an insurance card. If you get sick, you go to the hospital and your bills are being paid. Now, if the bills are being paid, it means the hospital now can have the medicine, it can afford to have the right equipment, it can have the right amount of staffing. Right now, we're trying to operate a hospital on a budget. Okay? It doesn't work. And the budget is grossly inadequate. So everybody's finding ways to cut corners to make this thing work. So we've got to be able to make that change, and I'm very anxious about that happening. The Mexicans have done an analysis on St. Jude's and some of the hospitals in the South, so we're expecting that report any day now. I just heard that the audit of St. Jude's was just completed, and it will be handed over to myself and the Director of Finance tomorrow, and then it will be presented to Cabinet within another 2 weeks. We are working very hard on the Owen King. We had a group from Europe that came down that's made a presentation to us. I'm meeting with a group out of Cayman. We've spoken to the French authorities. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way possible. I honestly believe that integrating the wellness center into that complex, looking to put a university, a medical university, will add one form of revenue stream. Getting into health tourism would be another potential revenue stream. And then obviously introducing the healthcare insurance would be another revenue stream. And so hopefully we can find an entity to make that work.
Impacts?
In terms of impacts, I've had a chance to speak to the DPP. He's moving very quickly. I think that he will be making some pronouncements soon as to what his findings are. I continue to reach out to him to let him know that we're here to support him in any way. And we did have a very long meeting with him and the Attorney General and also the Minister of Security with regards to the judicial system and everything else. So that's a the big ask that he's asked for in terms of beefing up his own department, as well as beefing up the judicial system, because that's going to help him in his overall ability for convictions. But I think that he will be making some pronouncements on impacts. I've certainly not heard from any of the other countries to date, because I think that they're also been watching and monitoring what's taking place. And I think that so far, knock on wood, everybody's satisfied. And I really hope that we can bring this thing to a conclusion as quickly as possible. But I will say to St. Lucians that we continue to work to complete the list of 25 recommendations that were made. So I want to assure St. Lucians that we're going to do everything possible to make sure that we can't find ourselves back into this position. So that's the update on those things.
Lucia had a question? Yeah.
One
question, right?
One.
Okay.
My question is about the St. Lucia Tourist Board. The employees have been given their walk-in papers, but we have yet to hear about the legislation for the transition from the Tourist Board to the Tourism Authority. Did the government perhaps put the cart before the horse? And who is staffing the St. Lucia Tourist Board currently?
That's a great question. No, we didn't put the cart before the horse because the goal was that by April, when the new budget process comes in, that we would have already started that process. So unfortunately, if we had waited until April to make that announcement, it means that the first quarter allocations would have gone to be to pay off the staff, because everybody was paid off and all their redundancies were paid off. So we're in the process right now. A small team of actually putting the structure together. We're very close to completing the legal framework for the whole thing, and then a special team will be hired to now go and recruit the top executives of that entity and move forward. But we're not waiting. We're actually meeting with companies right now to help us in terms of the rebranding of St. Lucia. We're stepping out a bit of the norm and not going with tourism-related entities. I personally believe for a long time that the traditional tourism marketing companies have lost their way. They used to be able to do really nice ads on glossy newspapers and magazines to help with what we call the branding of the destination. But now social media is the dominant communication. And they don't seem to have been able to translate that into brand. And brand is everything. I mean, it is everything about marketing our destination. And so one of the things that we're also looking to do is create a company called Brand St. Lucia. And so Brand St. Lucia will have the Citizenship by Investment, Invest St. Lucia, Pinnacle, TIPA, the marketing board, and there's a couple more. Everybody who's related to promoting St. Lucia, they will be sitting on one board together. So it means that everybody now knows what the other person's doing. So when tourism is marketing or doing a big push in the UK, as an example, they can bring TIPA, they can bring the agricultural people, the CIP program. When the CIP people are out promoting in Asia, they're now bringing that brand St. Lucia and everything else that goes with it. So that's the level of synergy and coordination that we're trying to make happen.
Okay, we're in our final 10 minutes, so we'll take our final question.
Good evening, PM. Forgive my lateness. I guess since I couldn't hear everything else you said, I'll ask a question based on, I think, the last question Stan may have asked concerning healthcare and Owen King EU. I heard you mention the fact that you like the fact that the wellness center is also part of the entire hospital complex.
No, I didn't say I like it. I said I think that we're going to have to include the
Include it, I'm sorry. For a while now, we haven't heard any of our past administrations speak about the criminally insane. We have Bordelais, which is at about 50% above capacity. They're already stretched for resources. It is no secret that we do have people who have been incarcerated, who have been convicted of crimes, who have been deemed mentally insane. Now, there's an argument on two sides of the argument where people believe that these people should be housed at the mental hospital, and we do know that there are no facilities in place to incarcerate people or to treat people who have been convicted of crimes. Moving forward, how do you propose we deal with that aspect of mental health and the justice system?
You do know that the Owen King Hospital has a reduction in the number of beds by almost 40. And the rationale behind that was that we were supposed to change our healthcare system to focus a lot on primary health. So it means primary health would mean that they would help do the diagnosis at that level. They would help prepare you for the operation, and you literally go to the hospital for the operation, or if you're in critical condition. And then the recovery is also back at the primary level. Included in that is wellness, is mental health. I ask you the question, do you think that it makes sense to take people from the rural area and put them in this big concrete monster that is so alien to what they have, and that family members who want to go and visit them from around the island have to get transportation? So I have a problem with that. And so we're looking at actually decentralizing both care for the elderly. So imagine Black Bay. If I live in Castries, to get a bus to go to Black Bay. And you finally make it to View Fort, then you connect to Black Bay. Now when you leave Black Bay, where do you go? Which direction? Right? These are things that don't seem like we've all thought out. And my government, my party was involved in the development of Black Bay. But I think that we should be decentralizing care for the elderly, because as I said, 50% of the medicine is love. And it's getting people to have more access and leaving those jobs now in the rural areas. And I think that if we're doing that also with mental health, we can achieve that. And clearly, the criminal mental health, there's going to have to be a special facility made for them. But it's on a much smaller scale than what it currently is happening.
Okay. You did say, Mr. Prime Minister, that social media is the most dominant form of communication, so it makes sense for me to end with a question from Facebook. Barbara Barker wants to know, what is one of the most important tasks you have accomplished so far or would like to accomplish during your time in office?
I would say to you that we have been able to get some new interest in St. Lucia and to get some people's confidence back in St. Lucia. And I think that we're showing a leadership role on critical issues, and that's all part of this branding of St. Lucia. And that's why I said in the House, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. Can't say that we're going to be fiscally prudent and not be. Okay, but being fiscally prudent is going to require some very tough decisions. I don't want St. Lucians to underestimate how tough those decisions are, because sometimes we're going to have to go backwards in order to be able to move forward. I have been very surprised at how well our approach towards development has been received. And that maybe it's just the time, the fact that people have seen that the old way is not working and are prepared to accept a new way forward. And ours is basic on the premise of accountability. There's nothing difficult about what we're doing here. So even at the end of January, we're going to be putting on a seminar for all the ministers, all the permanent secretaries, all the statutory bodies on compliance. So compliance teaches you that when you are on a board or you're a minister or you're a PS, your job's not to do the job of the technical people. So your job is to make sure that the bureaucracy is there and that they're getting the support to do their job. But here's the tough part. If technical people are not doing their job, then we need to change them. But that's not the first option. The first option if somebody isn't doing their job is to say you're fired. The first option is to say, okay, does this person really understand what their job is? So it's to review their job description with them, help hone it down so maybe they have a better understanding of what their job is. If they still don't do their job properly, the next question we ask ourselves is, do they know how to do their job? So are we providing the right proper training? Are we giving them the opportunity and the capacity to be able to deliver on their job? Now, if we've done all those things and they still don't do their job, what we normally say is, do they care? Okay? We're trying to bring that passion back to the civil service. And a couple of meetings I've had with a couple of departments, I was so heartened to see the reception to that people want to have pride in their job. I think a lot of people are going to the civil service today because it's just the pay. Okay? And they have no idea what this is supposed to deliver. And I'm saying to people in St. Lucia, if you're going to work for the government, you have been given a great responsibility to do something special for your country, and then you also get paid to do it. So you're able to take care of your family, but also you're able to make lives better for your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your friends, and your neighbors. And this is what we're going to be doing. So the time that we're spending now in putting together this 4-year plan is to give people a sense of direction. Now, the United Workers' Party's manifesto is that compass for now, because that went to vote. That's what the people voted for. So it has the mandate of the population of St. Lucia, and that now becomes the direction we're moving in. What do we want to do? We want to create a globally competitive education system. Because we're saying the education system today is inadequate. We're hearing that 45% of the people who are unemployed in this country have a primary school education or less. And 90% of the people who are unemployed in this country have a secondary school education or less. Okay? Question is, what are we teaching them? Why is it that they can't get employed? Why is it that, and I'm not picking on Royalton, okay, why would we have a hotel coming here and that so many jobs that we had to justify allowing foreigners to come in to do those jobs? That's an indictment against us as a country, that we've not prepared our people for that. So when we talk about a globally competitive education, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're seeing affordable quality healthcare. Okay, what we have today as a healthcare system, I don't have to pretend to anybody, is grossly inadequate, it's irresponsible, and the sad part is a lot of people are trying really hard. You go and see the nurses, you meet the doctors, you meet the people who are maintaining those facilities, and they're doing the best that they can. You know, when I went up for the fire at Victoria the other day, and it was by where the dialysis machines were, you know, and to see how everybody was shipped out of that room and the conditions of the room, that's not acceptable. And we have to do a better job at making those things happen. So the short answer here is that we have achieved a lot of things. We've been carrying the message. We've been creating apostles to come and join the train for change. And I'm very grateful that Sandals has agreed to make the announcement that he did. That's a huge investment. Okay? And I want St. Lucians to also appreciate the fact that Antigua was in line, Barbados was in line, Tobago was in line, and so was Jamaica. And we were able to convince Mr. Stewart to come back here, even though he had 3 properties. And I want some of the critics to stop for a moment, who say, oh, Sandals is going to put in a 4th property, as if that's bad for us. But what does that say about him, that he is willing to invest so much of his empire here in St. Lucia? Have we not looked at it from that perspective? Because he can't take that hotel away from him. Once he builds it, it's in St. Lucia forever. I'm very grateful for Mr. Teo L. King. I mean, I had not met the man before, and I've been so impressed, and the constant calls and the letters updating us on the meetings that he's having around the world in convincing people to want to come and invest in St. Lucia. I'm very excited about the CIP program. I think that we're heading in the right direction. I'm particularly excited about the Sovereign Fund, and I'm even more excited about the residency program, which we will give more details to, because I think that those are the things that are going to help stimulate. One of the trips I made was to Canada, was to meet a gentleman who was already going to do an investment here, so I can't take claims that I found him or anything else, but I didn't think that the investment was moving as fast as the pace that it ought to. And I met with Ben, and so Hopefully Ben will be announcing very early in the new year the old raffle site that he's going to be doing a gorgeous 18-hole golf course, which will include 250 lots and also an 85-room facility. But the exciting part is that after meeting with him and following up with him in terms of his investment, that he's now bringing people down because he's so impressed with St. Lucia. So it is that response to what we have, and that I still believe more than ever that St. Lucia is a gem of an island. And I think that we have more to win than to lose. And I'm more confident, and I'm so proud of the solutions. I was down in Soufriere, and I was leaving Sugar Beach, and they had a guy who was doing fresh juice, you know, and fabulous fresh juices, you know, and I sat with him for a little while, and I said to him, the only thing that was missing, he didn't have a sign, okay, to say to the people, hey, you know, Rasta juice, okay, and order it before you go swimming. And he was so receptive to the idea. And this is what it is. The talent is there. We're just not doing enough to blow our own trumpet. And I can tell you, this government will do everything to blow the trumpet of solutions, to hold the flag high. And I say that even about my opposition. I'm proud about the opposition we have. I have no difficulties with the issues that they bring up, and also with the media. And once you're going to research your information, and this is to make the country better, then I'm all in support of it.
Just to end, Mr. Prime Minister, what would be your final message? What are you asking of solutions in 2017?
2017 is to tighten your belt, hold on, tighten your seatbelt, and to embrace the change. It's going to be difficult. It always is. To leave what you are accustomed to doing and to try something new. But we have no choice. Honestly, the country is in a financial quagmire, and there's tremendous amount of potential, but we now need to convert that potential into reality. And it's going to require fundamental change. And the one thing I want to ask of Solutions is to bring back that solution pride. Let's wave the flag. Let's celebrate who we are. Let us not make excuses. And the biggest one is crime. Crime is a reflection on us as a society. We can control it. And I can say to you that if society says that there's going to be no more killings, there will be no more killings. If people know that their neighbors are going to report them, if they know that their mother or sister are going to report them, and they're not going to tolerate any form of crime, it will change. And why is it that we can't have that? Why did our fathers and our uncles and our grandfathers and our great-grandparents fight for our independence? Why are black people in America still trying to fight for their own rights 400 years later? And yet we turn around, we kill each other, we rob each other's homes, all the same things that we say that the white man did and disrespected us. That's within our realm to control. This is the change that we can make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking all the questions. I would like to thank the ladies and gentlemen of the press for your pointed questions as well. I hope that a lot of the issues have been addressed here tonight. Thank you to those who sent Facebook questions today as well. You have been tuned in to the opening of the year press conference by Prime Minister Alan Chastanet. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ICTs, or Information and Communication Technologies, are essential for the achievement of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. An ambitious action plan for people, prosperity and the planet, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals aim to eradicate poverty and strengthen universal peace through collective partnerships. promoting economic growth, social inclusion and environmental sustainability.
People everywhere can reap the benefits of connectivity. Let us empower individuals with these transformative technologies so that they can advocate and innovate for our common future.
Digital financial services lift people out of poverty. Not everyone has a bank account, but many have mobile phones.
As mobile digital technologies spread to even the poorest and most remote regions of the world, we have an opportunity to reach this underserved population and bring it into the global economy with expanded